What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined as always by my dad Sean, and today, reactions to the classics. We got a review of Bob Dylan's record Street Legal. Looking forward to diving into this one, Dad, because it is a bit divisive in the Dylan fandom, and this comes courtesy of suggestion from our patron and supporter Osmond.
Thank you, Osmond.
Osmond, shout out, man. Looking forward to discussing this one. We've done so many, I think besides the Beatles, we've done more Bob Dylan.
I don't even know what the count is now. I'm going all over the place on eras, so it gives us kind of an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and we have reviewed Desire, which I enjoyed quite a bit, and it was in this time period, so fun to kind of look at this one and the backstory of it. Before we get to that, though, if you enjoy this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. That helps us out, as well as hit that big red subscribe button. We upload every single day between album reviews, top 10 lists, song reactions. We live stream on Twitch, and just kind of have a fun time listening and talking about music every Friday, so be sure to follow us on there. And if you'd like to have us maybe review an album for you, check out our Patreon link as well. Shout out to the patrons who help keep this channel running. All that to say, Dad, let's get into some quick facts of this record, because it does definitely have an interesting backstory.
It definitely has an interesting backstory. 18th studio album released in June of 1978. It's coming off the heels of Blood on the Tracks and Desire, as you mentioned, which we have both those reviews up on the channel. Coming off that success, this album peaked at number 11. It was his first album not to hit the U.S. top 10 since 1964. However, across the pond in the UK, this is his most successful album, with albums sold over 300,000 copies. The only album that sold more is The Essential Bob Dylan, but that's not a quote studio album. So in that vein, the US critics panned it, the UK critics really liked it. Now there's some story behind this and how this came about. You're going to get to the fact that it was recorded in only 4 days in a couple minutes here, but Dylan's in an interesting part of his life right now. He's living in Malibu with his wife Sarah, his kids, and there's a story that he was hanging out with Leonard Cohen at the recording studio. Leonard was there recording an album. He came back and brought one of Leonard's female friends back with him. And when Sarah came down the next morning, Bob was sitting there with the kids and his female friend. And him and Sarah got into it. I'm not going to get into all because it's a he said, she said, and they sealed the court documents. But whatever happened, that was the end of him and Sarah. So that kind of spins him off. In the meantime, Dylan was still editing Ronaldo and Claire. It was an ill-fated film that he shot during the fall of 1975. And then Dylan was on the first leg of a tour with the Rolling Thunder Review. The summer approaching, he took a break from the film. He goes back to his farm in Minnesota, and he writes some songs. 6 of the 9 of these songs on this album were written during that time. Now, things changed for Bob at that time, because in August of 1977, Elvis Presley dies. And Bob said that just spun him into a depression where he basically didn't leave his house or do anything for a week. Then he goes in and they start rehearsing for a concert tour they were going to do. He had a lot of the Rolling Thunder Review. It wasn't going to be with them, but a lot of those musicians in. And the songs, he rearranged a lot of his existing songs, and they kind of took on like they mentioned almost like a Barry Manilow,
that
Marvin
adult
Hamlish,
contemporary type of sound that was in that time.
Yeah, a lot of saxophone, a lot of big band, piano keys. Almost like Elvis's shows were the last 5 years of his life, that big Vegas feel. So that's kind of where Bob's head was at this time.
Yeah, and whenever they ended up actually recording this, Bob just rented a mobile recording studio, because that had 24-track capabilities, which other studios that he was looking at didn't have.
Yeah, he's ended up just renting out a warehouse and putting that thing in there, and that's how they did it.
And he just noted that it was time to just kind of get it done, and he didn't know who he wanted to produce it. He couldn't find anybody, so even though he wasn't happy with Vito's work on Desire, he just went with him.
Yeah, isn't it funny, like, even if we're not happy with something, sometimes we just end up going with the known and go, all right, I'll just do it anyways. That was interesting.
Yeah, and so some of the people that worked on this record noted that it just kind of had that live feel to it, because as we mentioned, he cut this in 4 days.
4 days, man.
He knew exactly which songs he wanted to record, so that helped the process. But still, 4 days, man, that's getting in, out, and on your way. But that it doesn't mean that there weren't problems, though, in the recording process along the way. One member noted that it was like Bob Dylan meets Phil Spector. Bob was noted to be a little bit cantankerous with some of the engineering assistants, just a little makeshift, let's get a mic over here, mic over there. But all in all, they were I don't know if I'd say pleased with how it turned out, but they got through it.
And unlike other albums, and I think it's obviously due to the 4 days, and probably there wasn't a wealth of material that was written for this. There's not a ton of tracks that didn't make this album. There was only 3, because mostly their albums we've done, there's so much stuff left off that are on bootlegs.
So many outtakes.
So much stuff in my research says this is better. So many of you that comment say, oh, this is much better than what made the album. So this didn't really have this. Then he goes on a tour. He stays overseas. Some of the musicians on the tour kind of went down on records, and he stayed overseas for the most of it because he didn't want anybody seeing the quality of this with the big band and the Vegas kind of stuff. But he eventually brought it to America, and many of the critics called it the Vegas tour or the Alimony tour, and kind of just tore Bob apart. So before we get into this, I'll just say, it's the usual. All tracks are written by Bob, but I kind of talked to you about this. Dylan in the studio sometimes, he wasn't the easiest guy to deal with, and I think when guys are so good, when they write the lyrics and they compose the music so that the song is there, and they do it all by themselves, and they're so brilliant. I think they know what they want it to sound like, and they know how it should be, and it's hard for them to get that out, and they just get irritated eventually, like, how can you not know this? So I think that's kind of a defense sometimes. Doesn't mean you should treat people bad, but I think it helps you kind of see into
where they're coming
from. When someone's a genius, and I don't throw around that word lightly, and I don't think Bob came off looking like a genius on this album, but the generalness of Bob Dylan is, I do believe he's a lyrical and musical genius. I really do.
Same here.
And in that, I think it sometimes just makes it pretty difficult for other people to work with them in the studio. It'd be better if they could just go in there a la Prince and do it all themselves. But Bob didn't do that kind of stuff. But that's going to bring us to our first track, Changing of the Guards. It's over 7 minutes long, releases a single but failed to chart. Lyrically, it's prompted much critique, both positive and negative. Criticizes a song in which Dylan unsuccessfully and cynically parodies his anthemic self in haunting fashion. Conversely, some critics found much depth and meaning in the song's lyrics. It journeys, he talks about 16 years. Basically, people think it's from when he started out in the music business, through his divorce to Sarah, through his conversion to Christianity, which was announced shortly after this. Some biblical allusions.
Lots of religious,
start to pop up in this album, especially apocalyptic stuff. But you got to really dig into the lyrics. They're very veiled, but I think it's a pretty good opening track.
Yeah, this was one of my favorites on the record, actually. Longer tune, 7 minutes long, but I think it rewards multiple listens as you dive in, and it has a myriad of interpretations you can have. For me, I'm kind of landed on it being about Bob's relationship with music throughout the years.
Yeah, I think that's what I would say as well.
And, obviously introduced to the female backing, the more pop-centric type of sound that we have throughout this record, which, I know your mileage may vary on that. I tend to, tolerate it and enjoy it at certain points myself. And I like the lyrics. Eden is burning, either get ready for elimination or else your hearts must have the courage for the changing of the guards. And again, religious references coming in one after another here, it seems. So again, I think it kind of worked as an opener to just show where Bob was coming from at this point in his life.
Yeah, I agree, and that's going to take us to the second track, New Pony, which is probably either about his new girlfriend, Mary Alice Artis, or about Sarah, or maybe a mixture of both. For me, it was so. Nice horns in it, so maybe that is going to be the redeeming factor for you in it. I don't know.
Yeah, I like the guitar solo in the middle. The sax was cool, but overall, I think his delivery was a bit over the top. I wasn't a big fan of this song at all. He did name his pony Lucifer, Bob being an absolute madman. But I can't.
I wouldn't ride a horse named Lucifer, but yeah.
I can't say this will end up on a Bob Dylan playlist for me, but that takes us to our next track.
No Time to Think. This is 18 verses. It's over 8 minutes long. I absolutely have no idea what it's about. I try to break down the lyrics several times. I'm sure, Trey, you probably do, and some of you out there who are smarter than me on Dylan probably do. However, it's one of my favorites. It's because instrumentally,
it's an epic,
and musically, it's just very pleasant.
Yeah, this was one of my favorites as well. I really enjoyed the cadence to the track as it seemed to smoothly flow from one verse to another. Got great lines like, you fight for the throne and you travel alone, unknown as you slowly sink, and there's no time to think. I'm with you. I'm not 100% sure what it's about, but that's one of the beauties of Dylan's, songs. You can comb through them in multiple listens and still discover new stuff. Bit of a nobility vibe, talking about queens and tyrants in there. I think there's something along those lines probably in the meaning there. But yeah, man, let us know your interpretations on this track. Would love to hear them. All that to say, though, this was one of my favorites.
And I think that's kind of ironic because we're both sort of lyrics guys. And obviously that's why we identify with Dylan so much. Yeah, this is one of our favorites for both of us, and we have no idea what it's about. So we'll go to song 4, Baby Stop Crying. Was released as a single, didn't do anything in the U.S., much like the rest of this album. Went to 13 in the UK. Supposedly based a little bit loosely on a Robert Johnson song, Stop Breaking Down. And in it, Bob plays the role of a consoler to a despairing woman, even asking for a pistol in the opening verse, claiming he, quote, can't tell right from wrong. Commenting on the content of this song, Bob once said that, quote, the man in the song has his hand out and is not afraid of getting it bit. He's got the saxophone, he's got the trio of female backing vocalists. What'd you think of this one?
I enjoyed the chorus more than the verses with those female backing vocals coming in.
Lots of horns on this one for sure.
The verses didn't really do much for me, just in Bob's delivery of it. So, I mean, it still was a solid tune, but...
and whereas I thought he sounded really good on this.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I wasn't feeling it as much, but, the message is one you can get behind. Seems like they... both are up against it, but together they can get through whatever life throws them. And that already ends out to the first side.
It does. It's crazy. You got to start off the second side with Is Your Love in Vain? 45-second instrumental to start. Not bad, but I think the instrumentals take away from the power a little bit. Basically, he's just professing his love for her and whether it was in vain.
Yeah, I think that's the theme of the track. He notes, are you willing to risk it all, or is your love in vain? And I enjoyed his delivery more here. And again, had that big band sound.
It did. It definitely did.
Maybe toned down just a notch or two to let his voice shine through. Might have been a little bit better.
I think so.
But hey, man, I again kind of enjoyed the topic of it, even if it's not a favorite of mine on the record.
Now we're going to go to Senor. And then in parentheses, Tales of Yankee Power. Obviously, Senor is a polite title for a man in Spanish, kind of like English Mister, but El Senor is also the Spanish translation of the Lord, as in God used in the Bible. If Dylan had this in mind, it fits the apocalyptic imagery of the song, suggesting an appeal to God for some clarification. And I think in this, he calls out God sort of in some points and mentions things that happened in his own life, like unplug the cable, the whole electric time. Obviously Spanish sounding in some places. You got the horns coming in. With Bob, he's singing really hard, I guess I would say, strain. So a different sort of sound to him. I know this one is well thought of. What did you think?
I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed the intrigue of the Senor here, who seemingly has all the answers to what Bob is asking. And, at the end, it seems Bob's ready to go into the unknown, as he notes, let's overturn these tables. And as you mentioned, Dad, disconnect these cables. This place don't make sense to me no more. Can you tell me what we're waiting for? Senor. So, yeah, just with the mystique of the track, I thought it, gave it a step above some of the previous couple tunes that were on the record.
Yeah, and I read an interview that he did, and he talked about this song, and he just said that he was on a train one time and fell asleep, and he woke up and it was midnight, and there was this guy there that looked like he was 150 years old.
Only Bob, man.
His eyes were almost burning like fire, and I thought, that's a guy I'd like to talk to. Now, whether that's true or not, it's a fantastic story. That takes us to True Love Tends to Forget, just basically about a girl he loves, and she's drifting away from him. I thought, good instrumentation on this one.
Yeah, you had the guitar in here as well. Had a bit of a sing-along quality that obviously isn't found in most of Dylan's music.
That's a very good point.
So I kind of liked it for that aspect. And you got a line in here, every day, living with you or something along those lines. It's like playing Russian roulette. Yeah. Ouch, man.
Ouch, yeah.
But, I thought this, again, had that relatability to it. So though not a standout, was still pretty solid.
Yeah, we go to the penultimate track. We better talk this over. The relationship's over. They should let it be. Guessing it's probably about Sarah.
Yeah, he notes it may be over, but also sees the bright side that we've done nothing to each other. Time will not erase.
Yeah.
Notes that they need to talk it over when they're sober and whatnot. Again, kind of fun musically, and this one is a bit more straightforward than a lot of the rest of the record.
That's what I thought too, and I thought that line in particular, talk it over when we're sober, could mean we're drunk and we're arguing, or it could mean more so when time has gone
When
by.
time has healed some of those wounds.
Yeah, the emotions are down somewhat. That could be it as well. But yeah, pretty good tune. That's going to take us to the final track. Where Are You Tonight? In parentheses, Journey Through Dark Heat. Bob has said the song is about the individual's enemy within. Some critics think it references his divorce, the foreshadowing or announcing his conversion to Christianity. Once again, some people have found allusions to the lyrics of Robert Johnson. There's 13 verses. He wants a girl. They drifted apart. Uses all kinds of comparisons and analogies, even some biblical allusions. Very upbeat to finish this album. Sounds good.
Quite lively. That's how I would describe this track musically. And, you know, he, as you were kind of mentioning, Dad, he was able to balance kind of those love metaphors with that, you know, those allusions to other things, some of those biblical imagery. So kind of balance those two. I thought he did an excellent job. And that, I think he saved the best for last. This was actually my favorite track on the record, and you know, I think was a fitting way to close out. You know, this is a very solid opener and closer from Changing of the Guards to then this track, and a lot to say here from Bob, and yeah, it just kind of encapsulates a bunch of the themes that we've had in this record into a nice bow at the end here.
Yeah, it takes us to our favorite track. So I know one of yours is "Where Are You Tonight" that we just finished with. That's my honorable mention. I got "Baby Stop Crying" and "No Time to Think."
I got
3 and 4.
Yeah, I got "No Time to Think" and "Changing of the Guards" as well up in there too.
Yeah, well, that brings us to our overall score. Look, we already mentioned at the start, we've done a ton of Dylan from all different, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I feel like I'm at an old school radio station. Hits of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and today. But we've got a good glimpse now, I think, into his music. And for me, this album was okay. There wasn't any song that I disliked. It was a solid, consistent effort with the sound. Not really my thing when it comes to Bob, but I mean, it's Bob, and I love Bob. So for me, I'm going to be at a very solid 6.75.
Yeah, it's funny because we never talk about that's exactly the rating I have for it. Okay. 6.75, man. I'm kind of, I think, in the middle. I know some people really love this record, others really hate it.
I'm neither.
I thought it was a solid album, man. I thought it was, there was tracks on there I really enjoyed, and then others that were a bit more forgettable to me. But, you know, I'm a fan of kind of the horns and the female backing vocals being brought in. Again, not probably the best arrangement for Bob's type of voice and lyrical content.
It comes back to that 4 days you were talking about. That doesn't help.
You're right. And so, again, I think this just shows, too, how Bob was able to be a chameleon musically, in a sense.
And man, if you're going to be around this long, you need to be able to do that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think this kind of works. So, yeah, I agree with you.
And it might be hurt, too, in the sense it came after, you know, Blood on the Tracks and Desire.
True.
2 records that I think are just excellent, and Bob just was firing on all cylinders with. And so you might have had, at the time, a little critical, you know, comparing it to those two, which is, you know, a tough and high bar to reach at.
Agreed.
But all in all, a solid effort, an easy, you know, listen just to go through. And so if you're a Bob fan and haven't ever listened to this, give it a spin.
Give it a listen, man.
See what you think.
For sure.
And speaking of that, Dad, let us know, y'all, what you think of this record in the comments. Would be curious to hear which side of this record you fall under. Thanks for all the research, Dad. Some interesting stories here for sure.
Always fun with Bob, man. Always fun. Always enjoy it.
Shout out to our patron Osmond
Thank you, Osmond,
for suggesting this one to us. And until next time, y'all, thanks for watching. Happy listening, and we will see you.